Hey guys, and welcome to another brand new video. In this video, we are once again kind of seeing some brand new improvements when it comes to the PlayStation 5, PlayStation 5 Pro, and as well one of the more popular games out there with Black Myth Wukong. Now, we are still seeing some skepticisms though. I'm going to highlight this because as in my video yesterday, we had a chance to go and kind of see the deep dives and like the digital foundries and more of the tech, I guess, exuberant type folks out there that are kind of like sitting there on the computers doing the nifties and kind of like glowing and like, locking on in the frame rates and kind of seeing what's up. But for this, we kind of want to go and still see these changes because they are good. Like, we're seeing some initial changes and patches and updates for the Pssr, different optimizations and performances, which is good. Like, overall, like the video we made yesterday was, I would say, a good vibe. And I would still say this is a good vibe too as well, although the skepticism is still remaining. So we're gonna go talk about the fact that the Black Myth Wukong is getting updates, which is good because there is like tens of millions of sales. But like I said, let's go and do a little bit more of a nitty-gritty deep dive into it as well. So make sure you guys are subscribed with the notifications on. Thank you guys all so much for all the videos and just good vibes as well as we're kind of winding down this year. And don't forget, we're going to be taking a little bit of a mini break probably when the new year starts. I'll have an update video on that and discussing all that too. And also the PS5 Pro giveaway as well, all kind of locked in. We're waiting for a response right now from the winner. We also have some more stuff locked in too as well. So if you guys will stay tuned for that. So yeah, subscribe if you guys want to. The affiliate links down below, the Twitter, Twitches, all that good stuff. And let's go and dive in the fact that Black Myth Wukong now finally has gotten its own PS5 Pro patch and update, and apparently too as well, as you're kind of going through the systems and trying to release all this type of stuff. Apparently the base console code was also improved as well, which is nice. But one of the big caveats with this is that, they're happy that there's changes and they're kind of coming as etc. But they apparently just don't go far enough for their liking. And of course as well, let's just dive on in. So Black Myth Wukong was a phenomenon. Great game. Loved it. The Unreal Engine 5 powered action epic sold millions of copies when it launched earlier this year. And impressing with its fast gameplay, sophisticated values, glaze them on more. The game was cool, but I enjoyed it. However, its configuration on the PS5 left something to be desired, employing bizarre frame rate locks and frame generation with a 30 FPS base frame rate. Developer Game Science also addressed at least some of those issues as of the latest patch. This has also added PS5 Pro support, which is great, using the Pssr to improve image quality for pro players. So the console version finally is in reasonable shape, and should we expect any more issues too as well? And that's where they're kind of breaking them down. Saying, let's start by taking a look at the patch PS5 Pro code. The most obvious superficial change here is that there is some sharpening slider now, with no sharpening applied. Intriguingly enough, the image looks soft but relatively free of aliased edges. Okay, and dialing it up to 5, which is the default, gives the image a look that is pretty typical for lower res current gen console titles. Ramping up the slider to 10 provides maximum crispiness for players who want to max out on local contrast. Compared to the launch code, the value of about 7 matches the base PS5 and its performance configuration. Basically just allowing a few more updates and changes, which I do want to say I like that consoles are now including this. Having the chance to go and have these various sliders and changes and things optional, I think I like. So outside the sharpness tweak, the most obvious visual change is that the game's Lumen GI presentation is also slightly altered. There's a more obvious occlusion present in certain parts of the game world essentially, and the shadow maps sometimes appear slightly different as well. The other modes also have some GI differences related to launch code, though they are affected less obviously. Intriguing enough. So other visual settings appear similar, at least in their test as well. That includes resolution, which remains at 1080p internally, with no apparent upsampling to a higher output resolution. And then frame gen is unfortunately still a reality here, and the performance is generally similar to the test as well, usually holding 60 FPS too. So basically saying the game itself is just kind of a good general vibe. The game's intro runs with frame gen disabled and mostly hangs in the 40s and 50s. Okay, so it's not proper 60, but it's fine. And then there's some occasional dips during the other segments, probably during cutscenes, a lot of animations and stuff, which makes sense. Even on PC, they do that as well. So I suspect that the game may be disabling frame gen during especially sudden changes in camera position, which basically just saying they have to a lot of things going on, different changes. You have to render things and things appear on the screen for the first time, causing dips, whatever it might be. Listening to whichever way you slice it, basing a performance mode on frame generation, which impacts input lag, is not a great fit for a fast action game running at only 60 FPS, and it's likely not even necessarily for 60 FPS gameplay, as they demonstrated before. So they lean more heavily on FSR or TSR, and a reasonable 60 FPS experience should be achievable even on the PS5 CPU. Basically, they're trying to say hey, it could have been a lot more optimized and run a lot better, and as well with just different camera angles and more things going on, it doesn't hold the 50, it kind of holds a 40-50 pretty well, but there is still improvements nonetheless. Also saying two performance mode is similar there, with other two modes differ more dramatically. The quality mode takes an obvious hit to the image quality, with less definition and detail in the foliage and fine geometry, which some people are okay with because once again it is an action adventure game, and it's also relative to the earlier code. A quick pixel count reveals the issue. The quality mode appears to be rendering at 1080p, down from roughly 1440p on average before, and the old quality mode was upsampling to 4K, while the new quality mode looks more like a 1440p or 1620p. So basically they're kind of questioning of why they even picked this. They're trying to like fine-tune stuff a little bit more, and it's not being as optimized as people would expect. Other visual settings should also have seemed to be bumped to as well. Nice again, we're seeing more shadows, more obviously of a higher resolution, less aggressive cascades, better draw distance, and overall just big improvements for this. This is more so, I believe, still in the baseline PS5, but a lot of stuff will also be factored into the PS5 Pro as well. Basically, if you make the base version better, and you're either trying to upscale the PS5 or as well just utilizing better GPU, CPUs, etc., it'll be a little bit nicer overall. So the entire thing is getting an improvement, but once again, it's kind of being fine-tuned in really weird ways. It's still working, but it's kind of like weird, you know? So frame rates are improved over the base game, at least in some sense, and the original quality mode ran with an unstable frame rate, often running into the low to mid 30s. The quality mode is now a sensible straight 30 FPS cap too as well, which is nice for all that. And then obviously the brand new bounce mode too as well. There's a different types of visual treatments. And the new image obviously has more detail, finer geometric lines, managed to present without artifacting, and the pixel count reveals a similar setup to the quality mode with a 1080p internal resolution with this objectively 1440p like output. And performance-wise, it also spends most of the time at 45 FPS, which remains bafflingly the default frame rate cap in the mode, which means it's an unsteady procession of frames at 60 Hz output with a mix of 60 millisecond, 33 millisecond frame rates. Basically trying to go and say like they just made weird decisions. Like the high level of all this mumbo jumbo is that it's still at a baseline 1080p with like upscaling, and though you'd probably expect more of a better upscaling, like say a 4K, they're maybe doing like a 1440p, which I don't believe is also 4K. I think it's more of like a weird like in between like a 2K if I remember correctly. For like I probably should know this on the top of my head, but don't mind me. Just a lot of numbers over here. But when it comes to these resolutions, it's basically saying it's not like being as optimized as well. Performance mode is not being as optimized too, and at the same time, like they kind of realize that may just want to have more of a stable FPS regardless and make things look a little bit nicer if they possibly can. So let's go talk about more of the PS5 Pro as well, because I think sometimes people are more curious on this. So PS5 Pro, let's start in the quality mode. So all those also prior things also will relate to the PS5 Pro. If they're optimizing the baseline, it's kind of good. And as well, they also just kind of changed up some of the settings, but a lot of you guys probably have the game on PS5. So basically the same for this one for the quality mode. The biggest change here is the introduction of the Pssr, which works from roughly a 1296p input resolution typically, produces a 4K-like final image, which is kind of what I talked about before. It's perceivably sharper, especially during movement, and holds up really nicely on a 4K TV set. Some elements that weren't effectively anti-aliased with the FSR are cleaner here. It's basically saying there's a little bit of a cleaner situation, like that noisy hair on the first boss and recently occluded detail in general, and there is a bit that is the signature Pssr noise if you look closely, though it's not as obvious from a normal viewing distance. Basically saying like there was a little bit of shimmering and overall like just general AI bloat, but it does seem like it's a little bit less obvious and it's getting a little more cleaned up, kind of similar to what we saw too as well with the prior like Alan Wake and what we're going to hopefully see in say like Silent Hill. So despite the fact that this is a Unreal Engine 5 game, the lighting is generally stable and consistent here with the Pssr without Silent Hill 2 like shimmer. So basically the same, like I said, it's like just if you really really look for it, you might be able to find it, but it does seem like it's more fine-tuned, which is nice. Like we're expecting more games to turn into that. Though they're also saying that said, the lighting was already pretty stable with the FSR, basically saying the old AI was already kind of good. Let's say you're utilizing just either on PC or whatever, and it was mostly fine. So basically maybe it's just the baseline was okay, and they had a chance to upscale the original images they already had, like the assets they already made, or utilizing the Unreal Engine 5 engine might just run a little bit better, who knows. But basically saying it's all around nice. So that's just less of an issue in general for the content in this title, and they did also note that some lumen changes again between the PS5 code and the PS5 Pro, though those seem more substantial than the tweaks they noted in the various PS5 versions. Performance is in line with the base console, as also locked at 30 frames per second in their test, which feels alright on their controller with motion blur max. Basically saying it's still max at 30 FPS even on the Pro version, which is a little bit weird because it is a slightly better hardware, etc. And still having a 30 FPS game, even if it is on a 4K upscaler, is a little bit on the weirder side. So saying the balance mode is quite similar to the quality mode, with a roughly 19 or 12 and 96p, typically internal res taken to 4K using Pssr, so utilizing the AI and bumping it up. And the most conspicuous visual difference here comes down to the shadows, which are a higher resolution than the quality mode. The setup is similar to the PS5 split then, with a fairly conservative upgrade for the 30 FPS targeting mode variant, and these are some lumen tweaks, though, that do mirror the quality mode a little as well. Frame rates hovering around 45 FPS are typical at a 60 Hz output, and the game delivers a more or less straight 40 FPS at 120 Hz output, which is weird because I feel like you won't be able to go utilize that though, because at 120 Hz, I believe you have to have the frame rate to match the Hertz, if anything. So I'm not sure if that's going to be fully optimized as well, but you guys probably know more than me when it comes to those bigger details, if you guys know. But I kind of feel like it's still, once again, not fully utilizing all the internal, basically the frame rates. The refresh rates are not going to be working because if you only have 60 FPS, you can't really utilize 120 Hertz from my knowledge. I don't think it necessarily hurts to have that, say on a higher Hertz monitor, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the frames are even there for you to go and utilize from my understanding. So I'm not, they're saying they're not a fan of the game looks on a 60 Hertz panel in this mode, but at 120 you get a steady frame pacing and consistent controller responses. So overall, in my opinion, that would still be skeptical, but of course as well, if it's running stably, that's still good, but you may not have the higher refresh rate, because once again, if it's usually it kind of depends on what kind of frames you get. That does have a big say into it. Also saying too as well, the performance mode hasn't changed much. It's still a 60 FPS targeted mode using frame gen and still runs at 1080p, kind of similar to the baseline PS5. And then compared side by side, it appears very similar to the old performance mode, minus with some of those lumen discrepancies. So once again, they are fixing stuff and things getting better, but it's not like this crazy new change up, but it does look nice though as well. This mode still appears to be using FSR 3 as well. It also performs very similarly to the base console performance mode. So once again, not as big of maybe a big changes that people are expecting. So again, we see the same process of possession of 33 millisecond frames if the camera position changes rapidly and non-linearly, suggesting frame gen may be turned off in those moments. It's unfortunate that this mode hasn't been substantially revised, I agree, because this is probably the mode on the base console that they found the most lacking. So between the PS5 Pro's larger GPU and boosted CPU, they'd hope that the resources would have had a decent 60 FPS targeting mode, with that's what I was kind of trying to as well. I feel like 60 on a Pro is kind of important, you want to focus on that. So perhaps this is something that game science can consider for a future update, though they're still baffled as a wireframe generating from a 30 FPS baseline can't be considered a good idea at all. And I agree, I feel like if you have 120, you can kind of go and basically fill in the frames a little bit easier versus a 30. Also saying too as well, that at least on the high level, there's some critiques, but they are still they're happy. They're still improving the game, even on the Pro, even on the base PS5. And on top of that too, it's nice because they also have these different quality and balance modes, and they're making trade-offs and achieving stable frame rates. At the same time, it's also kind of nice. We have some improved things like shadows, and the Pssr is apparently not fully breaking. But once again, it's not some crazy update. And they're even saying the Pro is on the conservative side, saying it does not represent a clear improvement from the base game. The quality and balance modes go from 1440p image to 4K one, with the Pssr providing a nice upgrade for Pro users, but there is also, there's basically no crazy bumps, no crazy extra ray tracing, but it does look nicer on the Pro. So I think at the end of the day, it's still good, but it's still very skeptical on why it's good, but it is still good, but it's still very 50-50. So I kind of want to hear your thoughts and comments and all this down below, because there's a lot of information and tech that we had a chance to go and see. I appreciate you guys all so much for watching. I hope the PS5 Pro keeps getting more updates, and you guys are all fantastic. Enjoy the rest of your day. Subscribe if you guys are new. Leave a like, your thoughts and comments on everything down below.